When there is violence, I think that's what people see and hear about, and they try to connect it to something. They want to figure out, well, what is the reason for somebody to come in and like when we think about what happened in El Paso, Texas, the shooting at the Walmart, it's like we want to identify something, a cause for that type of behavior. But it's not one single factor in that individual's life that caused him to choose that particular behavior on that particular day. It's a multitude of factors that went into play in that person's life in that moment. So people automatically assume, maybe there's a mental health issue, because that's what previous news reports have indicated. I was talking to a friend of my son and was telling him what we do, that we work with individuals with schizophrenia and major mental health issues. And the first thing out of his mouth was, "Aren't they dangerous?" Again, what is he basing that on? He's basing that on what he's heard about it. And it's about if it's related to violence, that's what the news is going to cover. Mental health, I've worked in it for 30 years. And in my entire career, I've never had one single incident of violence acted upon me or that was in my office setting. It's a misperception that people with mental health issues are violent. Just like any health condition that you have, if you don't treat it, you're going to have symptoms. If I have high blood pressure, if I don't take my medication, my blood pressure is going to be elevated. Well, if somebody's actively psychotic and they're not taking their medicine, their voices are going to be more prevalent, and other symptoms associated with that disease. Most people that have mental health are very responsible. They are compliant with medications and their treatment, and they function very well in our communities. We can go to the stores, the movie theater, the mall, the local mall. There's people in there that experience mental health issues. We just don't know it because they, again, function very well when they're compliant with medication and their therapy. Typically the ones that we hear about that are committing types of aggressive behaviors are not being treated at the time. Maybe they haven't been taking their medication for a period of time, or they haven't seen their psychiatrist or their therapist for a period of time, and hence they're more symptomatic. Well, and when you think about one of the main indicators to future violence, it's has there been any past violent behaviors? I think about too people that are aggressive. I run a domestic violence program, and I always say one of the primary indicators is level of exposure to violence when you're younger. So there's many more outlets these days that involve violence. People can easily just type it in on a computer to look at acts of violence, or they can, they have it on their phone. There's video games, and just the acts of violence on TV have increased tremendously over the past generation. If they're getting all this exposure to violence, we look at that as kind of a learned or taught behavior. So when they're in situations when they're a little bit older, they typically act more impulsively, and they go with what they've been exposed to. And I think one of the number one predictor to kind of gauge in that is, has there been prior aggressive behaviors with this particular individual? And if not, has there been considerable amount of exposure to violence? I do work with people with the most serious and persistent mental illness, that's schizophrenia and the major depression and bipolar disorders. But when we talk about anxiety or depression, I'm talking about, Maryland has this statistic that says 1 in 5. And, that's 20% of our population. And I would say that's a low number. So when we talk about mental health, there's so many complexities to it, because not everybody that has a mental health issue experiences the very small percentage of individuals that may have those command type hallucinations that are untreated. Because some of them that do have it are probably in treatment and they're doing okay. So we're talking about a very, very small percentage of people that experience mental health that could have access to firearms. But there's a multitude of factors that lead up to that shooting. To pinpoint it on one thing and to say it's a mental health issue, I think is, I don't know what the right word is. It's, it's not accurate reporting, I guess. Yeah. There's much more to it. It's a multi-layered issue.